Let's look at how to multiply polynomials, and we'll jump right into examples. If I want to multiply the polynomial 2x times the polynomial 3x squared plus x minus 1, well, you would guess that you would simply distribute this across the plus and the minus, and that's exactly what you do. 2x times 3x squared is 6x to the third, right, because x times x squared is x cubed. 2x times x is positive 2x squared, and 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. And so here is the polynomial that you get. Now, a more interesting example is what you get when you take a binomial times maybe a binomial. 2x plus 1 times 3x minus 4. You can apply the exact same principle where you take the entire 2x plus 1 and you distribute it to each of these inside. So if you do that, you have 3x times this whole 2x plus 1 minus 4 times the whole 2x plus 1. So you use the same principle, but you distribute the whole thing. And now to finish it, you distribute the 3x to each of these and the negative 4 to each of these. So let's go back and examine what's actually happening here. So you can see the 3x, eventually the 3x is multiplied by the 2x, okay? So 3x times the 2x. The 3x is also multiplied by the 1. The negative 4 is multiplied by the 2x, and the negative 4 is multiplied by the 1. So really what's happening here is we're taking every term over here and multiplying them by every term over here and then adding it all together, okay? So your final result, doing it this way, would be 6x squared plus 3x minus 8x minus 4, and combining like terms, 3x minus 8x is negative 5x, and you end up with this. Okay, but I don't recommend distributing the binomial. That's what's happening here, but I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. Instead, take the shortcut that we just mentioned and think about it as multiplying every term of the first polynomial by every term of the second polynomial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for every way that I can get, the term with the highest degree here is 2x. It's to the first degree, and 3x is to the first degree there. So if I multiply those, I'm going to get an x squared. So I'm going to do all my x squared terms first. The only way to get an x squared is multiply 2x times 3x. Now I'm going to look for every way to get an x term. I can get a 3x here, or I could get a negative 8x there. That's the only way to get an x term. Okay? Now I'm going to look for every way to get a constant term or a degree 0 term. The only way to do that is a 1 times a negative 4. And so we end up with the exact same thing, but in a shorter manner. Let's apply the same principle here where I'm multiplying this binomial by this trinomial. Again, the biggest term I'll get here is an x cubed. So I get an x cubed by multiplying those two, and that gives me 3x cubed. That's the only way to get an x cubed. Now let's look for x squareds. I can get an x squared here, so that's a positive 3x squared. I can also get an x squared here, that's a negative x squared, and that's the only way to get x squareds. Now let's look for ways to get x's. I can get an x out of this, and I can get an x out of this. So that's negative x, negative 4x. Finally, let's look for a constant. The only way to get a constant is the 1 times the negative 4. And now I combine like terms. So I have 3x cubed, 3x squared minus x squared is plus 2x squared, negative x minus 4x is negative 5x, and we have negative 4 on the end. Let's look at multiple variables now. A little bit harder here, but you can still multiply every term by every other term. So xy times xy is x squared y squared. Xy times negative 2 is negative 2xy. 1 times xy is positive xy, and 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. We end up with x squared y squared. Negative 2xy plus 1xy is negative 1xy minus 2. And that's what we get.